I stood in the cluttered living room of my daughter Lydia's split-level home in Tillamook, Oregon, the air heavy with the savory scent of pot roast simmering in a slow cooker, mingling with the tang of red wine and the faint saltiness of the nearby Pacific. The room buzzed with the chatter of my family, their voices weaving through the clink of silverware and the soft hum of a jazz playlist Lydia curated for her perfect gatherings. At 70, I'd faced trials that would shatter most, losing my husband Walter to a stroke 20 years ago, raising our 3 children, Lydia, Mark, and Susan, on a seamstress's meager wages, and retiring to a quiet life of quilting, gardening, and organizing book drives at the Tillamook Library. But nothing prepared me for the laughter that erupted when I realized I'd forgotten my phone, my hands fumbling through my worn canvas purse, its frayed straps a relic from Walter's last Christmas gift. Mom, again. Lydia, 45, a real estate agent with a sharp tongue and sharper ambitions, rolled her eyes, her manicured nails tapping her crystal wine glass, her sleek blonde bob glinting under the chandelier's warm glow. Mark, 42, a mechanic whose hands still bore traces of grease despite his Sunday best, chuckled, his voice gruff, "You'd lose your head if it wasn't attached, Mom." Susan, 39, a part-time lifestyle blogger obsessed with her online aesthetic, smirked, leaning back in her chair, her phone propped for a candid shot. "Maybe it's time for a nursing home, huh?" Their words, laced with condescension, pierced my heart like a needle through fabric, the room spinning as their laughter echoed, a cruel chorus that drowned out the jazz and silenced my breath. It was a rare family dinner, one I'd anticipated for weeks, driving 30 miles from my cozy Tillamook cottage, its lavender-painted walls and rose garden a haven where I'd carved out a life after Walter. I'd spent days sewing a quilt for Lydia's daughter Ellie, 10, its patches of sea blues, forest greens and soft pinks, a labor of love, each stitch a prayer to bridge the widening chasm between me and my children. I'd arrived early, the quilt folded in a wicker basket, my heart buoyant with hope, imagining Ellie's smile, picturing my children gathered around Lydia's oak dining table, reminiscing about Walter's fishing trips, or the summers we'd spent combing Tillamook's rocky shores for agates. But the reality was stark. Lydia, always chasing her next commission, barely hugged me, her eyes on her phone, texting clients. Mark, weighed down by his struggling auto shop, grunted a greeting, his mind on unpaid bills. Susan, snapping photos of the table setting for her blog, barely looked up, muttering about needing my blackberry pie recipe for a sponsored post. I'd given them everything, late nights mending clothes to fund Lydia's business degree, Mark's trade school, Susan's art classes, my own dream of opening a quilt shop shelved to pay their way. I'd sewn prom dresses, patched jeans, and worked extra hours at a fabric store, my fingers calloused, my heart full, believing my sacrifices would bind us. Yet here they were, mocking my forgetfulness, reducing me to a punchline in their polished, self-absorbed lives. I forced a smile, my cheeks burning as if slapped, and excused myself to the kitchen, the clatter of dishes a shield for my trembling hands. Lydia's stainless steel sink gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights, a cold contrast to my cottage's warm wooden counters, where I'd knead dough or sketch quilt patterns by lamplight. Their laughter wasn't just about the phone, it was a dismissal of me, of the woman who'd stitched their lives together through Walter's death, through lean years when I'd skipped meals to buy them shoes. I'd always been Mum, the constant they leaned on, Lydia for small loans to tide her over, Mark for babysitting his twins, Mia and Max, 8 when his wife traveled, Susan for recipes to prop up her blog's flagging engagement. But their condescension revealed a truth I'd avoided. They took me for granted, their love a transaction, tied to what I could provide, not who I was, a woman who'd taught herself bookkeeping to balance our budget, who'd organized library book drives that brought kids to literature, who'd rebuilt a life after losing Walter's laughter. I slipped out to the porch, the Oregon evening cool, the air sharp with salt and pine, the distant crash of waves, a faint comfort against the ache in my chest. Lydia's manicured lawn stretched toward the street, her mailbox emblazoned with her real estate logo, a symbol of her relentless ambition. I clutched my purse, my fingers tracing its frayed edges, memories of Walter flooding back, his grin when he'd given it to me, his calloused hand in mine, his voice promising we'd see Ireland's textile markets one day. Tears stung my eyes, but anger burned hotter, a fire kindling in my chest. I called my friend Helen, a 72-year-old retired teacher, who'd been my rock since we'd bonded over Jane Austen at a book club, her voice a lifeline across the misty miles. "They laughed at you for forgetting your phone," she said, her tone sharp with indignation, her words crackling through the phone. "Marjorie, you're not a joke. You raised those kids alone, kept a roof over their heads, sewed their dreams into reality. You deserve respect, not ridicule." Her outrage mirrored mine, a spark that ignited a resolve I hadn't felt since I'd stood at Walter's graveside, vowing to carry on for our children, for myself, my hands clenched in grief, but my heart unyielding. I stayed on the porch, the stars emerging above Tillamook's cliffs, their light faint but steady, like the strength I felt growing within me. Their laughter replayed, Lydia's eye roll, Mark's gruff chuckle, Susan's biting smirk, each sound a wound, but also a challenge. I wasn't the forgetful old woman they saw, destined for their cruelly jested nursing home. I was Marjorie Tate, who'd sewn costumes for school plays, who'd organized community quilt raffles to fund the library, who'd found joy in sketching coastal scenes Walter had loved. I drove home that night, the winding coastal road a path to clarity, the Pacific's roar a drumbeat in my ears, the cliff's silhouettes dark against the moonlit sky. My cottage welcomed me, its lavender walls glowing under a single lamp, the scent of roses drifting through an open window, the quieter balm after Lydia's noisy dismissal. The next morning, I woke to the chirp of gulls, my resolve as clear as the dawnlight filtering through my lace curtains. I opened my laptop on the oak table, its surface scarred from years of quilting, and made a decision that felt like rebellion. I'd change my phone number, share it only with Helen, and cut contact until my children learned my worth. I had $40,000 saved from Walter's life insurance, and my retirement fund, a nest egg for emergencies or dreams I'd never chased, a quilt shop, a trip to Ireland, a coastal cottage closer to the sea. This was an emergency, not of money, but of dignity, of self, of reclaiming the woman they'd dismissed. I drove to the phone store in Tillamook, the clerk's curiosity met with my firm smile, my gray hair tucked under a scarf Walter had loved. "New number, please," I said, my hands steady, my heart racing with the audacity of my choice. I texted Helen, the digits from my new phone, her reply instant. "Just you and me, Marjorie. Let them figure it out." I laughed, her loyalty a gift, her mischief a mirror of Walter's, when he'd tease me about my meticulous stitches. I sat in my car, the phone store's neon sign buzzing, the ocean's scent drifting through the cracked window, and felt a shift. I wasn't running, I was choosing building a life where only those who saw me could reach me. I also revived an old dream, sketching plans for an Etsy shop, Marjorie's Quilts, to sell my custom designs, my sewing machine waiting in my cottage, its hum a promise of purpose. I'd always sewn for love, blankets for my grandchildren, gifts for neighbors, but now I'd sew for me, for profit, for power. I spent the afternoon researching Etsy, studying competitors, my librarian's precision guiding me through pricing, photos, and tags. I wrote in my journal, a habit from my sewing days when I'd sketched patterns, now filled with plans, fabric budgets, listing drafts, a vision of independence. I wrote about Lydia's ambition, Mark's burdens, Susan's shallowness, their laughter a wound but also a spark. I wrote about Walter, his belief in my strength, his laugh when I'd patched his fishing vest, his dream of Ireland a thread I'd follow. I'd warned my children years ago, when they'd skipped my 60th birthday for their own plans, Lydia to a conference, Mark to a camping trip, Susan to a party, "Don't take my love for granted." They'd laughed then, dismissing my hurt as mum being sensitive. I was done waiting for their respect. I'd stitch a new life, starting with a single number, a shop, and a heart that refused to be mocked. The weeks after that humiliating dinner at Lydia's were a masterclass in quiet rebellion, my new phone number a fortress, its walls invisible but unyielding, with Helen as its sole gatekeeper. I moved through my routine in Tillamook with a calm facade, as if the world hadn't shifted beneath me, tending my garden's roses, their velvety petals brushing my fingers like a whisper of resilience, sewing quilts in my cottage's sunlit nook, where morning light spilled through lace curtains onto my oak table, sipping chamomile tea by the hearth's crackling fire, its cedar logs popping softly, but my heart, my very soul was on Marjorie's quilts, my fledgling Etsy shop, where my designs, intricate patterns of coastal blues, forest greens, sunset pinks, and creamy whites inspired by Tillamook's shores, were beginning to find an audience, each sale a stitch in the fabric of my independence. My children's laughter, their cruel nursing home jest, echoed like a taunt in my quieter moments, each memory fueling my resolve to prove them wrong. I wasn't just a retired seamstress, a widow, a mother they took for granted. I was Marjorie Tate, who'd stitched love into every seam, who'd survived Walter's death, and who'd now draw a line they couldn't cross. I poured my energy into the shop, transforming my living room into a studio, my oak table, a gift from Walter, its surface scarred from years of projects, buried under swatches of cotton and linen, spools of thread in every hue, and sketches of quilt patterns, lighthouses glowing against stormy skies, waves curling in frothy whites, starbursts blazing in golds and navies. I'd spent $2,000 of my savings on a professional camera, softbox lighting, and a simple website, my savings dipping to $38,000, but my vision as clear as the Pacific after a storm. I photographed each quilt in my garden, the ocean's mist curling around the roses, their crimson and pink blooms a vibrant frame, the distant cliffs a rugged backdrop that made my work pop, the salty air clinging to my skin like a promise. I fumbled at first, my photos blurry, my listings clunky, but I taught myself, watching YouTube tutorials late into the night, my cottage aglow with lamplight, the hum of my sewing machine a steady companion. Helen helped, her teacher's eye-catching typos in my descriptions, her encouragement a balm to my nerves, as we sipped coffee on my porch, the gulls wheeling overhead, their cries sharp against the ocean's roar. "You're a star, Marjorie," she said, admiring a quilt with starburst patterns inspired by Tillamook's night skies, its threads catching the sunlight. I priced my quilts at $150, $300, competitive but fair, my research meticulous, hours spent studying Etsy trends, customer reviews and hashtags, my librarian's precision a guide through the digital maze. Orders trickled in, each ping of my laptop, a spark of validation that warmed my cottage's cozy walls, a baby quilt for a new mom in Seattle, its soft blues a nod to the sea, a throw for a couple's anniversary in Boise, its greens evoking Oregon's forests, a wall hanging for a retiree in Portland, its pinks a sunset's blush. The first month brought $1,000, a modest sum but a triumph, my savings ticking upward, my confidence growing like the roses I tended, their thorns a reminder of my own strength. Customers loved the personal touches, my handwritten thank you notes, penned in careful cursive, a lavender sachet tucked into each package, its scent a nod to my garden, a printed card sharing the quilt's inspiration, like the wave quilt born from a stormy walk along Tillamook's shore. Reviews began to glow on Etsy. Marjorie's quilts are heirloom quality, crafted with love. I printed each one, taping them into my journal, a habit from my sewing days when I'd sketched patterns, now filled with sales figures, customer stories, and reflections on my children's dismissal, their laughter a catalyst, not a defeat. I wrote about Lydia's ambition, her cold efficiency, a contrast to my warmth, Mark's burdens, his shop struggling under debt, Susan's shallowness, her blog a facade of perfection. I wrote about Walter, his belief in my resilience, his laugh when I'd patched his fishing vest, his dream of us selling quilts together a memory that spurred me on. I kept my new number secret, My old phone powered off, its voicemail full of their confused, then irritated, messages. Helen reported over coffee at her cedar-walled cottage, its shelves lined with novels and her own knitted throws, the air rich with the scent of her baking bread. Lydia called me, frantic, she said, her eyes twinkling with amusement, her grey curls bouncing as she leaned forward, her mug steaming. Said your number's disconnected, thinks you're having a senior moment or lost your phone again. Mark's worried you're mad, keeps asking if you're okay, mentioned Mia and Max missing Nana. Susan's annoyed, says you're ghosting them for attention, wants your chowder recipe for her blog. I smiled, stirring my tea, the porcelain cup warm in my hands, my heart steady despite the pang of hearing about my grandchildren. Let them stew, I was building something new, a life where their needs, Lydia's loans, Mark's childcare, Susan's recipes, didn't dictate my days. My cottage, with its creaky floors, quilt-draped chairs, and the faint roar of the ocean through open windows, was a sanctuary, its silence a gift after years of their demands, their voices always pulling, never pausing to see me. They tried reaching me through Helen, their messages a mix of frustration and entitlement, relayed over our weekly walks along Tillamook's rocky shore, the waves crashing against jagged cliffs, the air sharp with salt and seaweed, the horizon a blur of mist and sky. Helen, a widow herself, shared stories of her teaching days, her voice warm as she described defiant students she'd won over, her strength a mirror of mine. Lydia showed up at Helen's cottage, her SUV gleaming in the driveway, demanding my number, her face flushed with irritation, her voice sharp. Mom's being ridiculous, she told Helen, who shrugged, her loyalty unwavering, her smile polite but firm. She's fine, Lydia, just unavailable. Mark left voicemails, his mechanic's drawl softer, asking if I was sick, mentioning the twins' drawings for Nana, his guilt a weight I could hear. Susan emailed Helen, accusing me of playing games, demanding my clam chowder recipe for a sponsored post, her impatience a familiar sting. Helen relayed each one, her laughter warm as we tossed pebbles into the surf, her scarf fluttering in the breeze, her presence a gift. They don't get it, do they? She said, her eyes meeting mine, her weathered hands steady. I shook my head, my own scarf hand-woven, a gift from a library volunteer, catching the wind, my resolve iron. Not yet, but they will. I didn't respond, my silence a boundary, my new number a shield that held firm against their expectations, a line drawn in the sand they couldn't cross. I imagined their confusion, their calls unanswered, their texts bouncing back, their assumptions crumbling like driftwood under the tide. Lydia, in her polished office with its ocean view windows, must have paced, her control slipping, her deals faltering without my loans to prop her up. Mark in his cluttered shop, tools scattered, probably shrugged, hoping I'd get over it, his twins' questions about Nana, a pang he couldn't ignore. Susan, glued to her laptop in her airy apartment, likely fumed, her blog's aesthetic incomplete without my recipes, her followers noticing her silence, her carefully curated image fraying. I'd warned them years ago, when they'd dismissed my hurt over missed Mother's Days, late birthday calls, forgotten promises to visit. Don't take my love for granted. They'd laughed then too, calling me overly sensitive, their apologies fleeting, their behavior unchanged. I was done waiting for their respect, done being the well they dipped into without gratitude. I joined Tillamook's craft group, meeting weekly at the library where women swapped patterns, shared stories, and admired my quilts, their encouragement a new community, their laughter warm, not mocking. Clara, a 60-year-old potter with a quick wit, shared my listings at a local market, her enthusiasm sparking orders from neighbors. I taught a beginner's sewing class, guiding hands through stitches, my voice steady, my heart full. I rediscovered sketching, a hobby from my youth Walter had loved, drawing roses, waves and lighthouses in my journal, the pencil's scratch a counterpoint to my machine's hum, his praise a memory that warmed me. Marjorie, you've got an artist's eye. I sewed for Ellie, Mia and Max, quilts I stored in a cedar chest, their patterns bright with hope for a day they'd visit, my love for them undimmed, but my boundaries firm, a lesson for their parents. My quilts gained a following, reviews piling up, customers emailing thanks, a teacher who gifted a quilt to her retiring colleague, a grandmother who bought one for her newborn grandson, her note a treasure. This quilt is our family's heart. I spent evenings sewing, my machines hum a lullaby, my fingers deft despite arthritis, my cottage aglow with purpose. I dreamed of a coastal cottage in Cannon Beach, smaller but mine, closer to the ocean's roar, a vision born in the silence of my new number, a future where I'd live for me. I researched properties, eyeing a $200,000 retreat, its cedar shingles weathered by salt air, within reach if my shop kept growing. I wrote in my journal, pages a tapestry of triumph, detailing their pleas, my sales, my sketches, my resolve. I thought of Walter, his belief in my strength, his laugh when I'd sewn his torn shirts. I thought of my grandchildren, their innocence a pang, but my boundary held. I'd show my children what I could build, when they laughed, my shop a beacon, my heart a fortress, my life a quilt stitched with defiance, its patterns bold and unbroken. Maintaining the facade of absence was a delicate art, my silence a statement louder than any words, a boundary woven as tightly as the quilts I crafted in my Tillamook cottage. My children, Lydia, Mark, and Susan, expected me to relent, to call, to forgive their laughter as a momentary lapse, to resume my role as the ever-giving mother, always ready with money, time, or recipes. But my new phone number remained with Helen, my life a fortress they couldn't breach, its walls built of resolve and self-respect, unyielding as the cliffs that loomed over Tillamook's rocky shore. I tended my roses each morning, their crimson and pink petals soft against my fingers, the dew cool in the dawn light, their scent mingling with the salty tang of the Pacific drifting through my open windows. I sewed quilts in my cottage's nook, where sunlight danced across my oak table, its scars a map of years spent stitching love into fabric. I shipped orders for Marjorie's quilts, my Etsy shop now earning $3,000 a month, my savings steady at $38,000, each sale a brick in the foundation of my new life. Their mockery nursing home, they'd laughed, stung like salt in a wound, but it was fuel, each order a declaration that I was more than their punchline, each stitch a testament to my worth. I upgraded my shop, investing $3,000 in a professional sewing machine with programmable stitches and bolts of fabric from local weavers, their textures, soft cottons in stormy grays, rugged linens in sandy beiges, evoking Oregon's wild coast. My savings dipped to $35,000, but my income soared like the gulls outside my window, orders flooding in for quilts, plus new offerings, quilted tote bags with wave motifs, and throw pillows with starfish patterns, their coastal charm a hit with Etsy's tourist crowd. Customers raved, one sending a photo of her toddler Emma napping under my quilt, her blonde curls spilling across its sea blue patches, a moment I taped into my journal, its pages now a tapestry of triumph. I greeted each order with care, my handwritten thank you notes a signature, my lavender sachets a scent of home, my hospitality a craft honed from years of welcoming library patrons with tea and smiles. Reviews piled up, Marjorie's quilts are art, her care unmatched. Helen helped pack shipments, her hands steady as we folded quilts in my living room, her laughter filling the space, her stories of teaching rebellious teens a counterpoint to my tales of sewing through grief. You're unstoppable, Marjorie, she said, her grey curls catching the light, her pride a mirror of Walter's when he'd admired my first quilt, a patchwork of his old shirts, sewn in the lonely months after his death. My children's attempts to reach me grew desperate, their voices sharper, their pleas relayed by Helen over our weekly walks along Tillamook's shore, the waves crashing against jagged cliffs, the air thick with salt and the faint decay of seaweed, the horizon a blur of mist and sky. Helen, a widow who'd lost her husband to cancer a decade ago, shared tales of her classroom victories, her voice warm, her strength a beacon. Lydia showed up at Helen's cottage, her SUV gleaming in the driveway, her face flushed with frustration, her voice sharp as she demanded my number. Mom's being dramatic, she told Helen, who shrugged, her loyalty unwavering, her smile polite but firm. She's fine, Lydia, she's just living her life. Mark left voicemails, his mechanic's drawl softer tinged with guilt, asking if I was sick, mentioning Mia and Max's questions about Nana, their crayon drawings piling up at his shop. Susan emailed Helen, accusing me of playing games, demanding my clam chowder recipe for a blog post, her impatience a familiar sting, her blog's traffic dipping without my contribution. Helen relayed each one, her eyes twinkling over coffee at her cottage, its cedar walls cozy with her knitted throws, the scent of her baking scones a comfort. "They're scrambling, Marjorie," she said, tossing a pebble into the surf, her scarf fluttering in the breeze. I nodded, my own scarf hand-woven, a gift from a craft group friend, catching the wind, my resolve iron. Good, let them learn. I wrote in my journal, pages detailing their pleas, my sales, my dream of a coastal cottage in Cannon Beach, a cedar-shingled retreat, $200,000 within reach if my shop kept growing. I sketched its outline, imagining a balcony with ocean views, a studio for my quilts, a garden for my roses, the roar of the Pacific, a constant companion. I reflected on their betrayal, their laughter a mirror of smaller slights, Lydia's dismissal of my gardening advice, Mark's forgotten promises to visit, Susan's eye rolls when I offered to teach her sewing. I wrote about Walter, his belief in my resilience, his laugh when I'd mended his fishing vest under lamplight, his hand warm in mine, his dream of us traveling to Ireland's textile markets a thread I held tight. I wrote about myself, Marjorie, who'd been dismissed as a forgetful old woman but was now a creator, a seller, a woman reclaiming her worth with every stitch. I started a blog, Stitched with Strength, sharing my quilt-making tips, choosing fabrics, mastering stitches, and my story of setting boundaries, my voice raw and unapologetic, a beacon for women like me. I wrote about the dinner, their laughter, my new number, my shop, my heart laid bare on the screen, my cottage aglow with lamplight as I typed. The blog gained traction, readers emailing tales of their own stands, a 62-year-old leaving a toxic job in Chicago, a 68-year-old cutting off her ungrateful sister in Boise, their stories a chorus that filled my evening. I answered each one, my laptop a bridge to a community of resilience, my words a spark for women rising above dismissal. I joined Tillamook's craft group, meeting weekly at the library, where women swapped patterns, shared stories, and admired my quilts, their encouragement a new family, their laughter warm, not mock. Clara, a 60-year-old potter with a quick wit, shared my listings at a local market, her enthusiasm sparking orders from neighbors, her clay-stained hands a contrast to my thread-worn fingers. I taught a sewing class, guiding women through stitches, my voice steady, my heart full as they marveled at my quilts, their questions a gift. I rediscovered sketching, a hobby from my youth Walter had loved, drawing roses, waves, and lighthouses in my journal, the pencil's scratch a counterpoint to my machine's hum, his praise a memory that warmed me. Marjorie, you've got an artist eye. I sketched in my garden, the ocean's mist curling around me, the roses nodding in the breeze, my hands steady despite the ache of arthritis. I sewed quilts for Ellie, Mia and Max, storing them in a cedar chest, their patterns bright with hope for a day they'd visit, my love for them undimmed but my boundaries firm, a lesson for their parents. I visited the library, organizing a book drive, stacking novels for children, my hands lingering on a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, a reminder of my first meeting with Helen, her love of Austen a bond that held us close. Lydia's neighbor, a craft group friend, mentioned my shop at a Tillamook market, sparking Lydia's curiosity. Helen reported over tea on my porch, the waves a distant roar. She's shocked you're selling online, making a name. Helen said, her grin wide, her mug steaming. I smiled sipping tea, my heart steady, the ocean's rhythm grounding me. Let them see. I wasn't hiding, just selective, my life a quilt of my own design, its patterns bold, its seams unbreakable. Mark sent a letter via Helen, his handwriting shaky, apologizing for the dinner, asking to visit, his guilt palpable. Susan commented on my blog, her tone neutral, testing the waters, praising a quilt's color. I didn't reply, my silence a teacher, my quilts my voice, their vibrant threads a language of strength. I kept my routine, sewing by lamplight, gardening at dawn, the dew cool on my hands, my life a rhythm of purpose. I walked the cliffs with Helen, the wind tugging at our scarves, her stories of defiant students, a mirror of my own rebellion. I researched Cannon Beach cottages, eyeing a $200,000 retreat, its windows framing the sea, my income a steady tide. I thought of Walter, his pride in my courage, his voice urging me on when I'd sown through grief, his hand warm in mine. I thought of my grandchildren, their innocence a hope, but my boundary held, a lesson for their parents. I thought of my blog readers, their stories a community I'd built, their emails a chorus of strength. I'd warned my children, don't take my love for granted. Their laughter faded, replaced by the hum of my machine, the ping of Etsy sales, the crash of waves outside my window. My shop thrived, my blog grew, my heart stood firm, and I was ready to stitch the next chapter, a quilt of resilience, its patterns bold, its seams eternal. The day I signed the deed for my coastal cottage in Cannon Beach was a triumph. The Pacific's roar, a symphony as I stood in the realtor's office, my hand steady, my heart soaring like the gulls wheeling outside Marjorie's quilts. My Etsy shop had earned $20,000 in 6 months, a steady tide of income that fueled a $50,000 down payment on a cedar-shingled cottage, its price $200,000, my mortgage manageable at $1,200 a month, with my shop's $4,000 monthly earnings. I packed my Tillamook cottage quilts folded in wicker baskets, Walter's framed photo tucked carefully, my journal filled with sketches and dreams, leaving behind the life where my children's laughter had wounded me, their mockery nursing home, a distant echo. My new phone number remained Helen's alone, a secret that held firm as I moved 40 miles north, my children unaware, their voices frantic. Helen reported over tea at her Tillamook cottage. Lydia's panicking, says you vanished, she said, her eyes twinkling, her grey curls bouncing. Mark's worried you're hurt, mentioned the twins' drawings. Susan's mad, thinks you're punishing them for a joke. I smiled, stirring my tea, the porcelain cup warm, my heart free, and raised my quilt prices to $500, demand surging, my defiance a quiet tide washing away their dismissal. The Cannon Beach cottage was a dream realized, its ocean view windows framing the Pacific's endless dance, waves crashing against haystack rock, their foam a lacework against the horizon. Its weathered cedar walls and driftwood decor felt like an extension of my soul, a far cry from Tillamook's cozy but cramped lavender cottage. I set up a sewing studio in a sunlit room, its skylight bathing my quilts in soft light. My new machine, humming with designs, wave-inspired throws in frothy whites, starfish pillows in coral pinks, lighthouse quilts glowing with stormy grays and yellows, each pattern a love letter to the coast's wild beauty. My savings stood at $30,000, my income steady, my Etsy shop a beacon for customers from Seattle to Savannah. Helen visited, her eyes wide as she toured the cottage, its cedar scent mingling with roses I'd planted in a small garden, a vase of their blooms on the kitchen table. You did it, Marjorie, she said, sinking into a wicker chair on the balcony, the sea breeze tugging at her scarf, the ocean's roar a hymn below. I laughed, pouring wine, my grey hair loose, the salt air cool on my skin, my heart full in this haven I'd built. My blog, stitched with strength, exploded, gaining 10,000 readers, women calling me the quilt queen, my story of boundaries resonating across continents. I wrote about the dinner, their laughter, my new number, my shop, my move to Cannon Beach, sharing my heart in raw, unapologetic prose, my cottage aglow with lamplight as I type. Readers emailed tales of their own stands, a 65-year-old starting a bakery in Maine, a 70-year-old going no contact with her son in Texas, their stories a chorus that warmed my evening. I answered each one, my laptop a bridge to a sisterhood of resilience, my words a spark for women reclaiming their worth. Lydia learned of my move from a Tillamook neighbor, a craft group friend who'd seen my blog, Helen reported, her grin wide. She's stunned you moved without a word, Marjorie keeps asking how you afforded it. I smiled, sipping tea, the ocean's rhythm grounding me. Let them see, I wasn't hiding, just selective, my life a quilt of my own design, its patterns bold, its seams unbreakable. My children's efforts to reach me intensified, their pleas a mix of guilt and desperation, relayed by Helen over walks along Cannon Beach's shore, the sand cool underfoot, the cliffs jagged against the sky. Lydia visited Helen's cottage, her SUV, out of place on Tillamook's quiet streets, pleading for my number, her voice cracking, her control fraying. "Just tell me where she is," she begged, Helen said, her loyalty unwavering, her response firm. "Marjorie's fine. She'll reach out when she's ready." Mark sent a letter via Helen, his handwriting shaky, apologizing for the dinner, asking to visit with Mia and Max, their crayon drawings, tucked inside, hearts and stick figure, nanas. A pang I felt, but held firm again. Susan commented on my blog, her tone contrite, praising a lighthouse quilt, offering to feature my shop, a peace offering I ignored. I wrote in my journal, pages a celebration of freedom, the ocean's roar my backdrop, the cottage's cedar scent grounding me. I sketched the cliffs, their rugged edges a mirror of my resolve, the waves curling below, my pencil capturing the wildness I felt. Walter's praise a memory. "Marjorie, you see the world's heart." I joined Cannon Beach's craft community, meeting at a local gallery, its walls hung with seascapes, the air rich with turpentine and coffee. Artists swapped ideas, admired my quilts, and invited me to teach, their encouragement a new family. I launched a sewing workshop, guiding women through stitches, their laughter warm, their stories of reinvention echoing mine. A 55-year-old painter leaving a toxic marriage, a 67-year-old jeweler starting anew after loss. I hosted a craft group dinner, my cottage alive with chatter, the table laden with my clam chowder, blackberry pie and roses, the ocean a symphony outside. My shop's reviews piled up, a nurse gifting a quilt to her retiring colleague, a couple buying one for their beach house, their note a treasure. "Your quilt is our home soul." I added custom orders, charging $1,000 for bespoke designs, my income climbing to $5,000 a month, my savings ticking upward. I dreamed of a second shop, perhaps in Portland, my vision growing with each sale, each stitch a step toward a future I'd never dared imagine. Tillamook buzzed with my story, neighbors praising my Etsy success, some shunning Lydia for her role. Helen said over wine on my balcony, the stars bright above the Pacific. I didn't care, my world was here, in Cannon Beach, with my quilts, my blog, my ocean. I sewed quilts for Ellie, Mia and Max, storing them in a cedar chest, their patterns bright with hope, blues for Ellie's love of the sea, greens for the twins' forest adventures. My love for them undimmed, but my boundaries firm. A lesson for their parents. I walked the beach at dawn, the sand studded with agates, their smooth surfaces a reminder of Walter's fishing trips, his hand warm in mine as we'd hunted for treasure. I sketched the ocean, its waves a dance, my journal a gallery of dreams, its pages filled with sales figures, reader emails and reflections on my children's betrayal, their laughter a wound that had sparked this haven. I kept my routine, sewing by skylight, gardening at dawn, the roses thriving in Cannon Beach's misty air, their scent a comfort. I researched Portland's craft markets, eyeing a shop space, my income a steady tide, my confidence a cliff that stood firm. I thought of Walter, his pride in my courage, his voice urging me on when I'd sown through grief, his dream of Ireland's textile markets, a thread I'd weave into my future. I thought of my grandchildren, their drawings a hope, but my boundary held, a lesson for their parents, who'd taken my love for granted. I thought of my blog readers, their stories a community I'd built, their emails a chorus of strength. "Marjorie, you've shown me I can start over." I answered each one, my cottage a lighthouse, its glow a guide for women like me, my children's pleas faded, replaced by the hum of my machine, the ping of Etsy sales, the crash of waves outside my window. Lydia's neighbor shared my blog at a Tillamook market, sparking whispers, Helen said, her laughter warm. Mark's letter lingered in my journal. Susan's comment unread on my blog, their efforts a ripple against my tide. I'd warned them years ago when they dismissed my hurt over missed Mother's Days, late calls, forgotten promises, don't take my love for granted. They'd laughed, calling me sensitive, their apologies empty. I'd walked away, my coastal haven a testament to my worth, my quilts a language of defiance, my blog a beacon for the dismissed. My life was a quilt stitched with strength, its patterns bold, its seams eternal. And I was ready to weave the next chapter, my heart a lighthouse, my future a sea of possibility. The months after settling into my Cannon Beach cottage were a renaissance, my life blooming like the wildflowers that dotted the cliffs, their purples and yellows a riot against the gray of the Pacific's horizon. Marjorie's Quilts, my Etsy shop, was thriving, earning $5,000 a month, covering my $1,200 mortgage and more, my savings climbing to $35,000, each sale a stitch in an empire I'd never dared imagine. I hired a part-time assistant, Tara, a 25-year-old local artist with vibrant tattoos and a knack for packaging, her energy freeing me to design a lighthouse quilt, glowing with stormy grays and yellows, a dune-inspired throw soft with beiges, a wave pattern tote bold with frothy whites and blues, each piece a testament to the coast's wild heart. My blog Stitched with Strength had grown to 50,000 readers, women across the globe calling me the quilt queen, my story of boundaries and reinvention, a beacon for the dismissed. My children's laughter nursing home, they'd mocked, faded into a distant echo, replaced by the hum of my sewing machine, the ping of Etsy orders, and the ocean's roar outside my cedar-shingled haven. My new phone number remained Helen's alone, my silence a boundary that held firm, my life a quilt stitched with defiance, its patterns bold, its seams eternal. I transformed my cottage's sewing studio, its skylight bathing my oak table in soft light, the cedar walls hung with quilt sketches, waves curling, starfish glowing, lighthouses standing resolute. Tara helped photograph my work on the beach, the sand studded with agates, the waves a dramatic backdrop, the salt air clinging to our skin as we laughed, her youth a spark that reminded me of Susan in her art school days, before her blog consumed her. I invested $5,000 in premium fabrics and a second machine, my savings dipping to $30,000, but my income soaring, orders flooding in for custom quilts at $1,000 each, customers from London to Los Angeles, raving, Marjorie's quilts are heirlooms, woven with soul. I greeted each order with care, my handwritten notes a signature, my lavender sachets a scent of home, my printed cards sharing each quilt's story, a wave quilt inspired by a stormy dawn, a starfish pillow born from a walk with Helen. Helen visited weekly, her eyes bright as she admired my studio, her scarf fluttering on my balcony, the ocean's roar a hymn below. "You're a force, Marjorie," she said, sipping wine, her grey curls catching the sunset's glow, her pride a mirror of Walter's when he'd called my quilts up. My blog became a movement, readers emailing stories of their own boundaries, a 60-year-old in Dublin opening a bookstore, a 72-year-old in Sydney leaving a toxic family, their words a chorus that filled my evenings, my cottage aglow with lamplight as I typed replies. I wrote about my journey, the dinner, their laughter, my new number, my shop, my move, my voice raw, my heart bare, each post a spark for women like me. A reader, Clara from Maine, sent a photo of her bakery, its sign inspired by my blog, Clara's Courage. I taped it into my journal, its pages a gallery of triumph, filled with sales figures, reader emails and sketches of the coast, my pencil capturing the cliff's rugged edges, Walter's praise a memory. "Marjorie, you see the world's heart." I answered every email, my laptop a bridge to a global sisterhood, my words a lighthouse for the dismissed, my story proof that age was no barrier to reinvention. My children's efforts to reconnect grew urgent, their pleas relayed by Helen over walks along Cannon Beach's shore, the sand cool underfoot, the waves crashing against Haystack Rock, their foam a lacework against the sky. Lydia drove to my old Tillamook cottage, finding it sold, her shock reaching me through Helen, who chuckled, "She's floored you moved without a word, keeps asking how you paid for it." Lydia emailed Helen, her tones softer, asking to talk, mentioning Ellie's love for the quilt I'd given her. A pang I felt but held firm again. Mark sent another letter via Helen, his handwriting steadier, apologizing for the dinner, offering to bring Mia and Max their drawings of Nana now a stack, their stick figure hugs, a hope I cherished but didn't yield to. Susan commented on my blog, her words careful, praising a dune quilt, suggesting a collaboration, her followers noticing my name, her tone a plea I ignored. I wrote in my journal, pages a celebration of freedom, the ocean's rhythm my backdrop, the cottage's cedar scent, grounding me. I sketched the waves, their curls a dance, my pencil a tribute to Walter, his dream of Ireland's textile markets, a thread I'd weave into my future. I led Cannon Beach's craft community, meeting at a gallery, its walls hung with seascapes, the air rich with turpentine and laughter. I taught sewing workshops, guiding women through stitches, their stories echoing mine, a 58-year-old weaver escaping a controlling spouse, a 65-year-old sculptor starting anew after loss. I hosted a craft fair at the gallery, my quilts displayed beside Tara's paintings, the crowd buzzing, locals calling me the quilt queen, their praise a warmth that filled my cottage later, its table laden with chowder and pie, roses in a vase. My shop's reviews piled up, a nurse gifting a quilt to her retiring colleague, a family buying one for their beach house, their note a treasure, your quilt is our home's heart. I dreamed of a Portland shop, researching spaces, my income a steady tide, my confidence a cliff that stood firm. Tillamook whispered my story, neighbors praising my Etsy success, some shunning Lydia for her role. Helen said over wine, the stars bright above my balcony. I didn't care, my world was here, in Cannon Beach, with my quilts, my blog, my ocean. I sewed quilts for Ellie, Mia and Max, storing them in a cedar chest, their patterns bright with hope, blues for Ellie's sea dreams, greens for the twins' forest games, my love for them, undimmed but my boundaries firm, a lesson for their parents. I walked the beach at dawn, collecting agates, their smooth surfaces a reminder of Walter's fishing trips, his hand warm as we'd hunted treasures. I sketched the cliffs, their edges a mirror of my resolve, my journal a gallery of dreams, its pages filled with reader stories, sails and reflections on my children's betrayal, their laughter a wound that had sparked this empire. I kept my routine, sewing by skylight, gardening at dawn, the roses thriving in Cannon Beach's misty air, their scent a comfort. I hosted a blog reader, Sarah, a 67-year-old from Seattle, who'd left her toxic job after reading my posts, her visit a gift, her laughter warm as we walked the beach, her story a mirror of mine. I thought of Walter, his pride in my courage, his voice urging me on, when I'd sown through grief, his dream of Ireland a plan I'd fund with my shop. I thought of my grandchildren, their drawings a hope, but my boundary held, a lesson for their parents, who'd taken my love for granted. I thought of my readers, their emails a community I'd built, their words a chorus, Marjorie you've shown me I'm enough, my children's pleas faded, replaced by the hum of my machine, the ping of Etsy sales, the crash of waves outside my window. Lydia's emails grew softer, Mark's letters piled up, Susan's comments lingered unread, their efforts ripples against my tide. I'd warned them, when they'd dismissed my hurt over missed Mother's Days, late calls, forgotten promises, don't take my love for granted. They'd laughed calling me sensitive, their apologies empty. I'd risen, my coastal haven a testament to my worth, my quilts a language of defiance, my blog a beacon for the dismissed. I was the quilt queen, my life a quilt stitched with strength, its patterns bold, its seams eternal, and I was ready to weave the final chapter, my heart a lighthouse, my future a sea of possibility. A year after that humiliating dinner at Lydia's, I stood on the balcony of my Cannon Beach cottage, the Pacific's roar a triumphant hymn, the waves crashing against Haystack Rock, their foam a lacework against the dawn sky. My life had transformed into a quilt of my own design, its patterns bold with coastal blues, forest greens and sunset pinks, its seams stitched with defiance and love. Marjorie's Quilts, my Etsy shop, now earned $6,000 a month, my savings soaring to $40,000, fueling plans for a Portland shop, a dream once shelved for my children's needs. My blog stitched with strength, had 100,000 readers, women worldwide calling me the quilt queen, my story of boundaries a beacon for the dismissed. My children's laughter, nursing home, they'd mocked had sparked this empire, but now their apologies waited in my journal, their lessons learned through my silence. My new phone number, once shared only with Helen, was now a bridge I'd cautiously extended, my heart open but my boundaries firm, my cottage a lighthouse, its cedar walls glowing with purpose. The cottage was my haven, its ocean view windows framing the Pacific's dance, its sewing studio alive with the hum of my machine, the skylight bathing my oak table in soft light. I'd hired Tara full-time, her vibrant tattoos a contrast to my gray hair, her laughter filling the studio as we designed a lighthouse quilt, glowing with stormy grays, a wave-inspired throw curling with frothy whites, a starfish tote bold with coral pinks. Orders poured in, custom quilts at $1,500, customers from Paris to Portland raving, Marjorie's quilts are heirlooms, woven with heart. I greeted each order with care, my handwritten notes a signature, my lavender sachets, a scent of home, my cards sharing each quilt's story, a dune quilt born from a misty dawn, a starfish pillow inspired by a walk with my grandchildren. Helen visited, her eyes bright as she admired my latest quilt, her scarf fluttering on the balcony, the ocean's roar a symphony below. You've built a legacy, Marjorie, she said, sipping tea, her gray curls catching the sunset's glow, her pride a mirror of Walter's when he'd called my quilts magic. My blog had become a movement, readers emailing stories of their own triumphs, a 63-year-old in London, launching a pottery studio, a 70-year-old in Cape Town cutting off toxic friends, their words a chorus that warmed my evenings, my cottage aglow with lamplight, as I typed replies. I wrote about my journey, the dinner, their laughter, my new number, my shop, my move, my rise, my voice roar, my heart bare, each post a spark for women like me. A reader, Ellen from Oregon, visited her food truck inspired by my blog, Ellen's Empowerment Eats. We walked the beach, her laughter warm, her story a mirror of mine, her photo taped into my journal, its pages a gallery of triumph, filled with sales figures, reader emails and sketches of the coast, my pencil capturing the cliff's rugged edges. Walter's praise a memory, Marjorie, you see the world's soul. My children's apologies came slowly, their lessons hard won, relayed by Helen over walks along Cannon Beach's shore, the sand cool underfoot, the waves crashing, their foam a lacework against the sky. Lydia arrived at my cottage unannounced, her SUV parked crookedly, her face softened by guilt, her voice trembling as she apologized for the dinner, for years of taking me for granted, her eyes on Ellie, 10, who clutched the quilt I'd sewn, its sea blues glowing. I read your blog, Mom, Lydia said, her bob less sleek, her ambition tempered. I didn't see you before, I do now. I nodded, my heart open but cautious, my new number a gift I shared, a bridge rebuilt with condition. Mark visited with Mia and Max, 8, their crayon drawings, now a scrapbook, their hugs a warmth I'd missed, their father's apology raw. I was wrong, Mom, I didn't value you. I gave him my number, my voice steady, my boundaries clear, respect or nothing. Susan flew in, her blog quieter, her tone humble as she praised my quilts, asking to learn sewing, her apology a letter I kept. I was shallow, Mom, I want to know you. I shared my number, my heart softening, but my resolve firm, my love selective, a lesson etched in silence. I hosted a family dinner in my cottage, the table laden with chowder, pie and roses, the ocean a symphony outside, Ellie, Mia and Max giggling as I taught them to sketch waves, their pencils scratching, their laughter a balm. Lydia listened, Mark nodded, Susan watched, their respect a new thread in our quilt, their presence a gift I'd earned. I gave them the quilts I'd sewn, stored in a cedar chest, blues for Ellie's sea dreams, greens for the twins' forest adventures, their eyes wide, their thanks sincere. A moment I journaled, my heart full, but my boundaries intact. I wrote about forgiveness, not as surrender but as strength, my love a choice, not an obligation, my life a testament to selective devotion. I led Cannon Beach's craft community, organizing a fair at the gallery, its walls hung with quilts and seascapes, the air rich with coffee and laughter, locals calling me the quilt queen. My booth buzzed, quilt selling for $2,000, Tara's paintings a vibrant compliment, the crowd chanting my name, their praise a warmth that filled my cottage later, its table alive with craft group friends, Helen toasting my triumph. My shop's reviews piled up, a teacher gifting a quilt to her retiring colleague, a family buying one for their beach house, their note a treasure, your quilt is our home's heart. I planned a Portland shop, signing a lease for $2,000 a month, my income a steady tide, my savings at $38,000, my confidence a cliff that stood firm. Tillamook celebrated my story, neighbors sharing my blog, some shunning my children's past dismissal. Helen said over wine, the stars bright above my balcony. I didn't dwell, my world was here, in Cannon Beach, with my quilts, my blog, my ocean. I walked the beach at dawn, collecting agates, their smooth surfaces a reminder of Walter's fishing trips, his hand warm as we'd hunted treasure. I sketched the cliffs, their edges a mirror of my resolve, my journal a gallery of dreams, its pages filled with reader stories, sails and reflections on my children's growth, their laughter a wound healed by my ride. I hosted a blog reader, Maria, from Seattle, who'd started a bakery after reading my posts, her visit a gift, her laughter warm as we walked the beach, her story a mirror of mine. I kept my routine, sewing by skylight, gardening at dawn, the roses thriving, their scent a comfort. I planned a trip to Ireland's textile markets, Walter's dream, now mine, funded by my shop, my heart racing with possibility. I thought of Walter, his pride in my courage, his voice urging me on when I'd sown through grief, his love a thread I carried. I thought of my grandchildren, their sketches a hope, their visits a joy, my boundaries a lesson for their parents, who'd learned my worth. I thought of my readers, their emails a community I'd built, their words a chorus. Marjorie, you've shown me I'm enough. My children's apologies were stitches in a new quilt, their respect a pattern I'd woven through silence. Lydia called weekly, Mark visited monthly, Susan sewed with me, their efforts a tide that met my shore, their love earned, not eschewed. I'd warned them when they'd dismissed my hurt over missed Mother's Days, late calls, forgotten promises, don't take my love for granted. They'd laughed, calling me sensitive, their apologies empty. I'd risen, my coastal haven a testament to my worth, my quilts a language of defiance, my blog a beacon for the dismissed. I was the quilt queen, my life a quilt stitched with strength, its patterns bold, its seams eternal, my legacy a lighthouse, my future a sea of possibility, my heart full, my boundaries forever mine.